while I was out of town, in fact, the first day, that email blast that goes out around the world from Flippa gets sent out, and instantly I am getting pinged on my phone from people looking, people asking questions. I had no idea that it would be so fast and so extensive. It was really, really, in a very pleasant way, quite a surprise to me.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Humans of Flippa. Today I'm joined by Karen Boyer, who's joining us from sunny Florida. For those of you who don't know, I'm on the other side of the world here in Melbourne, Australia. It's cold where I am, it's hot where Karen is, and big welcome, Karen. Thanks very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Karen, you've successfully sold an asset on Flippa, but before we get there, just tell us a little bit about yourself and that journey of starting an e-commerce business.
I was coming off a career of being a police officer, and which was rather unique for a female at that time. And I really perceived myself as not having any civilian world skills, and yet knew that I was extremely young and needed to figure something out pretty quickly. I had no tech background, no medical background whatsoever. And I suddenly ended up founding a e-commerce business, developing tech and medical programs, things I had no knowledge of. But it took off quite quickly. And in the first month in business, I actually made more than I did in an entire year as a police officer.
That is so cool. And I must admit, offline before we were filming, I said, oh, look, if we can talk a little bit about whether you had a background in that particular business or whether you didn't. And you've obviously just revealed that you certainly didn't have a background. So how does that even happen? How do you decide to do something in that space? What led you to do it in the first place?
I think one thing that I've really discovered about myself over the years since founding Online MedCerts is I always have a real interest in doing things better and process improvement. After leaving law enforcement rather abruptly, I was taking a very short period of time to, kind of figure it out where I was going. And I decided to volunteer teaching CPR because really it was the only thing I knew that I could do that didn't involve law enforcement activities. And after teaching for a couple organizations, I left the first one because I thought this is a terrible way to do this. And when I went to the second one, I found that theirs was even worse. Yeah, right. And I thought I could do this better. So I did. I went to Barnes & Noble and I bought How to Build a Website for Dummies. I was not actually really using email at the time yet because we're going back about 17 years, maybe 18 years ago now. I figured it out overnight. I built a very crude website just out of a desire to see if I could do it better. Yeah. And I made money the next morning.
Oh, that's fantastic. Karen, you can see my t-shirt, as we say, Own Your Future, which is what you've obviously done. And so it's quite incredible. So you buy a book from Barnes & Noble, you find your first customer, you end up running this business, Online MedCerts, for 16 or 17 years. You get it to a point where if you're willing to say, I hope you don't mind me saying, sort of $5,000 to $7,000 revenue per month, and it's doing really well. So why would you then, so much time later, I mean, it's probably an obvious question, but why did you consider selling it?
Well, I would also add, not only was it producing great revenue, I was working very little. I was working next to no hours a month. Okay. So I was basically getting paid for doing nothing. My husband, when we first met, he said, well, what does Karen do for a living? Well, she prints money. And I really was kind of just printing money. And, earlier on, it was a lot of money because I had no competitors. This was the first of its kind business. There were no competitors on the market. I had, if I was spending $1,000 a month on Google Ads, I was having a heart attack. So certainly with no competition, the money was all mine. And certainly I developed some flattery competition over the years of a lot of people that saw what a great field it was. Making money to do nothing, that's not wholly true. Yeah. But I became very bored with it, and especially being a first of its kind, doing something that nobody else had ever done before. E-learning was not a thing then. I became bored and really wanted more human contact for a lot less money a month, I might add.
I do really love this story. And so just for context for everyone, so online med cert, so your top selling products were things like advanced cardiac life support certification, basic cardiac life support certification. Is that right? People are buying a certification for a medical skill.
The renewables. People who work in the healthcare field are required to carry these credentials and renew them every 2 years. There's no inventory that I carried on the product. I could be anywhere. I held nothing. You want somebody else to say that you can perform these skills, that you're competent in this. And that's really the purpose that it served, was keeping doctors being doctors and seeing patients, yet getting that merit badge that they were required to have by their institutions.
That's fantastic. Really, really nice to hear, and great learning for everyone. If you don't mind, let's fast forward to the sale process. So you put it up for sale. You've chosen Flippa. I can see here that you had over 4,000 buyers looking at your listing, which is a fantastic number. You then had, looks like, sort of maybe 20 to 30 different discussions going on. You ultimately found a buyer. Do you mind just talking us through the sales process a little bit? A lot of people find it quite intimidating. It's obviously quite complex when you're selling something at this value, certainly in your case in excess of $200,000. So tell us about the experience and how you found that.
I started thinking about selling the business probably now about 3 to 4 years ago. It had been on my mind to sell it. This wasn't something new or spontaneous that I did. And a couple of years back, I actually had looked at Flippa.
Yep.
And, I got distracted by whatever and kind of put it in the back of my mind. And, I reached a point that I was very much ready to do something different with my life. And certainly, my station in life is changing. My kids are getting older and really don't need mom money as much anymore. So I went back to Flippa. It was really the most appropriate, avenue I could find to sell an e-commerce business.
Yep.
And not only did the e-commerce specialty speak to me, it was also the fact that Flippa was reaching out to potential buyers. Yep. Around the world, because as I said, there's no brick and mortar involved in my business. There's no inventory. You can be anywhere. And I really felt that, given the fact that I had no medical expertise or knowledge, basic knowledge, or how to run an e-commerce business or any other business for that matter, I knew that there were going to be other people like me who those aspects really appealed to. Okay. So I went back to Flippa and, all of my questions were very readily answered. A nice team of people that if I had a question on the process, somebody was there to answer it.
Right.
Okay. When the email blast went out, so I took, 6 weeks or whatever to myself to, go, okay, I'm really going to do this and, kind of go through all my documentation, everything, sort of prepare myself, signed up with Flippa. It was a very seamless process signing up, and I don't feel intimidating at all. And then I decided to travel out of town to visit my college son. And while I was out of town, in fact, the first day, that email blast that goes out around the world from Flippa gets sent out, and instantly I am getting pinged on my phone from people looking, people asking questions. I had no idea that it would be so fast and so extensive. It was really, really in a very pleasant way, quite a surprise to me. How it just took off like wildfire. I mean, from that moment on that blast went out, it was just crazy how many people were interested in online med certs. And, there were some people that just said, I'm not in the market to buy the business, but I just wanted to tell you what a great concept.
Yeah.
And then tenfold, there were people who were I'm interested in buying. Tell me more.
Yep.
And they were really people from all over the world.
And so what was it about the eventual buyer, and how did that negotiation play out? Whatever you're willing to share there that might help other people.
It's Thanksgiving night, and I get a contact from one of the Flippa guys who's on your continent, and he says, I have a guy who right now who's willing to do a buy it now. Are you interested? Well, yeah. So it kind of set Thanksgiving upside down, but it was phenomenal. I mean, at that point we started, an interesting process that involved me in one country, my buyer in another country, my Flippa representative on another continent. It was very interesting to see so many people of different backgrounds and in different locations pulling this deal together. When it started, it just took off.
Flippa adds about 1,000 new buyers every day from all over the world. So there really is a great global pool of buyers from which to, I guess, farm and get deals done with. Now, in the negotiation, what kind of, if you could just enlighten the rest of the world on the experience, what type of material above and beyond was on your listing itself did your eventual buyer want to see? Were they quite, was there quite an extensive due diligence period? Were they quite interrogative?
The buyer and I were, we had a very personal conversation over Zoom right around Thanksgiving. And it was very personal. And I found that he was a parent of young kids, and he was really attracted to the lifestyle that I enjoyed as a parent of young kids, that freedom, the ability to earn unlimited amounts of money from all over the world any time of day.
That's wonderful. And so, okay, so let's fast forward. You've got this successful transaction that plays out. Someone's acquired your business for the first time in 16 or 17 years, post being a cop, as you say. What do you then do? You've had a successful exit. What's life been like since then, and what are you planning to do?
Well, the first month I got COVID. So we closed on the business New Year's Eve.
Yep.
And I had a great time out New Year's Eve. I have never celebrated a New Year's Eve the way I did.
Great.
Literally hours after the business closed, sold, and went into a month of COVID. So that was a bit of a drag.
Yep.
But was better for 2 weeks, starting to clean the house up again, and some things that I had neglected to do during the very short period that Online MedCerts was up for business. So 2 weeks later, I started another business.
Oh, wow.
Right.
That's fantastic.
Right.
And is that business still operational and going well?
I am still working. Yes, I've made it through another almost 6 months now.
Right.
Still an entrepreneur, but I was bit by that bug very early, and I don't see myself ever giving that up.
That's pretty wonderful story, I must say, Karen. From being a policewoman to starting a business with $35, I think you said. I hope I've got that right. And then buying the book at Barnes & Noble, which was part of that startup cost. Growing a business, and then eventually finding Flippa, going through that process and getting a really, really strong exit. Congratulations, and thank you so much for helping us out to learn a little bit more about you and your story today.
I am forever grateful for Flippa, and that I bookmarked Flippa's website quite a while ago so that I could easily come back to it and list Online MedCerts for sale. It was definitely the right thing for me to do. And I really no doubt that Flippa was the right place to list the business, and a great group of people to help me through that process.
Thank you so much for saying that. We appreciate that. And thank you so much for being a human of Flippa.
Thank you.